how have you, like, your sound for, album A through Z or whatever? How do you, how does technology and how to just like your skill level change how like your bass sounds? Like, how often do you find a different tone? How often do you approach it differently? And is it by, is it by song? Is it by album? Is it by just, era, so to speak? Or how do you go about that?
Probably I would say by album. Like each album, we're trying to figure out a bass sound that will go with the rhythm guitar. The rhythm guitar ends up getting tracked first, like the final rhythm guitar. And so much of what makes a death metal album sound great, like a large percentage of it is how the rhythm guitar sounds, and the bass is meant to complement that. Like it's pretty rare that you find someone talking about an album and saying that the bass tone made it or broke it kind of thing.
Right.
It can they can say that about rhythm guitars. So the bass can be a little bit unsung in the way that it supports the rhythm guitar. So yeah, we could I have a certain tone that I use live, and I kind of use that all the time. And our live sound man will dial me in the way he needs to dial me in, and it works well. But for each album, we'll end up just experimenting with different amps, different pedals, different things like that. I use the same bass, same strings, that kind of stuff, same pickups or whatever. That stuff is the same pretty much all the time.
Mm.
But we will mess around with the rig in the studio to make it support the rhythm guitar the best it can. So yeah, that's like the order, by the way, in the studio. Like we'll get the drums down. Once the drums are down, to me, that's like the frame, the foundation and
Yeah.
framework of the house, and then after that, you're putting the rest of it on. And so then the rhythm guitar comes next, then the bass, and then they'll start in on vocals and solos. And then it's on to the mix after all that's done. So yeah, the bass, yeah, it varies depending on how the guitar tone turned out.
Nice.
And but yeah, that's something that we really want to make sound awesome. And I think we've had some really good guitar sounds, and hopefully my bass tones made them sound even better
Yeah.
somehow.
Do you procure your sound with a mix of analog and digital, or is it just one or the other, or like?
Well, we're pretty, old school in that, yeah, we're miking a cabinet. I
Okay.
think I've only done one album with Cannibal Corpse where it was direct, and that was Skeletal Domain when Mark Lewis produced us. We used an Aguilar. I don't want to go too in the weeds with the gear here. I'm not sure how much people care, but we had an Aguilar Tone Hammer DI and a Dark Glass B7K DI, and we blended those. And that's what Mark used as the two channels. But for every other album, I'm pretty sure we've, had a rig,
Yeah.
a bass amp, cabinet mic'd up. But we also do a DI line, and we might put a plug in on it. I think we use the Dark Glass plug-in
Mm.
on Chaos Horrific, and on a clean channel or something. Eric does all that stuff. He'll record the mic, the rig, the main signal, but then he'll also record a DI and maybe even an overdrive channel from. It just depends. So he's got at least two channels to work with, and the one channel's completely clean. In case something just goes wrong, there's this technology now that probably most of the musicians listening or watching this would know about called reamping. And if you have a good DI signal, then you can. It's a nice safety net. If it turns out that your main signal isn't working in the mix or whatever, you can
Yeah.
just play that DI through an amp. So it's like this track that you've already recorded. You play it through an amp and record the amp sound, and then it'll sound, you know, good. It'll sound like that setup, even if that wasn't the original setup that you had when you recorded that track.
Cool.
So we haven't had to do that, I don't think, with my bass, other than for Violence Unimagined.
Mm-hmm.
We had to do it because I recorded in Oregon and then sent the tracks
Right.
down to
Right.
Eric, and then he reamped them down there.
Right. That's interesting.